What's up, guys? It's Crazy Tacos, and today we're just looking at the progress in the garden. I'm going to point out a few things that I learned and just cover some of the changes over the last week. Starting off today with this garden bed, we've got the cucumber plants. 2 out of 3 survived, and they've sprung up a bunch of new leaves recently, so I'm assuming they're doing well. Some of the flowers that we planted did not survive, so I'm going to be taking those out today. And the lettuce is just barely making it along here. This one seems to be doing the best, I'm assuming because it gets the most shade. What I found is that lettuce is not that great in the sun, so that might be why these guys are struggling, but they're making it. I'm just gonna let them try. But yeah, and then also we've got those soap bars in here. Also, we've got the cut up Irish Spring soap attached to these rails. It seems to work well. No food is missing. And in this garden bed, we've got those tomatoes I planted from the very beginning. They're starting to come up, and then the other tomato plants that we have looking pretty healthy. I've pruned off most of the lower hanging leaves that are touching the ground. What I learned is that if the leaf is touching the ground on the tomato plant, it can get disease from the soil. So it's very important not to let the leaves touch the ground. The other tomato plants seem to be doing pretty well. None of these got stolen by any critters, so I'm assuming the methods worked. Here you can see I pruned off a couple of the leaves there, and I dug the soil out underneath these tomatoes because they're so low hanging. Some of them have not produced still, but you can see the tomatillo plants have several coming out. So these ones are definitely making progress. Hopefully they'll spring up some tomatoes soon. And now on to my favorite garden bed. This is where all of my peppers are. These plants are really flourishing. Not quite, I mean, it looks like we've got maybe a jalapeno coming in right here. It's starting to come out. These little buds are really starting to happen now. And if you look over here, the green peppers are making quite a bit of progress since last time you saw. And so are the onions. I could see the tops of these onions coming through the soil, so I tried to pack some soil on top of them. But it looks like the onions are thriving pretty well. And here we have a new statue addition to the garden. She hangs out over here by this tree. It's a nice piece, you can see it from the deck. So we're getting ready to decorate and make it look even better as time goes on here. So the plan next is to dig out this back garden bed. I need to buy 8 more bags of soil, and I'm going to plant more peppers back here and some potatoes in the next one. As you can see, we got our chickens there hanging out, enjoying the sun. But I did want to mention that mistakes do happen. In life and everything else, sometimes you make a mistake, and what better than to learn from your mistake and help teach other people. So when I marked all my seeds in the beginning, I had them mixed up when it came to basil versus tomato. And I grew the basil and tomatoes in the wrong places and discovered that last night when I went to go eat some basil. So check this out. I thought that these plants were basil. They looked like this, but they're actually tomatoes instead. So here's what happened. All right, guys, so we've got these plants here, which I originally thought would be basil, and they're not. So we tried it, I was like, wow, this basil plant's exploding, and tried some of the leaves, didn't taste like basil at all. And then I realized I made a critical mistake. Got the tomatoes mixed up with the basils. So these are actually tomato plants, which should be planted in the garden bed, but they're not. So I'm gonna see about just putting them in a larger pot, maybe getting them to stand up. And then I'll show you where the basil is at now. So over here in the garden bed, here are the basil plants. It makes a lot more sense now after looking up what the leaves look like. These are for sure basil. So I think what I'm going to do is take these out of the garden and replace them with something else. They're still small enough I could easily transplant them, and hopefully they won't have too much shock. But yeah, so that's Amateur Hour at the Taco Ranch. In next week's episode, we're going to learn a lot more about getting the tomato plants healthy using compost and mulch. We'll do some transplanting. I look forward to having a successful garden. Thanks for tuning in.